Welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. India's foreign policy has almost always been the preserve of its prime ministers. Now, this is the case with the Modi government as well. Now, one of Prime Minister Modi's singularly significant foreign policy achievements has been his West Asia outreach. Prime Minister Modi has leveraged his personal connect with the sheikhs, emirs and crown princes of the Gulf countries. And this has borne rich dividends. Now, on the 12th of February, Qatar released 8 former Indian Navy veterans who'd been given death sentences, later commuted to life. We're still not sure how this happened. The circumstances are as shrouded in mystery as are the reasons they were convicted in the first place. And clearly there's a lot that was left unsaid in the picture last year of Prime Minister Modi with the Qatari Emir Hamad Al Thani. And now Prime Minister Modi is now in the UAE inaugurating the biggest Indian temple in West Asia. Joining me to decode Prime Minister Modi's Arab Connect are Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Abhijit Iyer Mitra and my colleague Kartikeya Sharma. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. I want to start by asking Abhijit, why is Prime Minister Modi's West Asia outreach such a big deal? Why is it regarded as one of his crowning achievements in foreign policy?
Thanks, Sandeep. It's probably because it's achieved so much. I think of all the foreign policy, outreaches that he's done, you could almost say that in terms of its deliverables, it's right up there with what Manmohan Singh managed to achieve with George Bush, which is the India-US nuclear deal. You look at it purely in terms of where it came from and where it has ended. This was, a region that used to consistently vote against India at the UN, every other place, keep passing running commentary on what was happening in India. Today, they not only refuse to comment on what India does internally, they invariably end up supporting India at international arenas. The relationship, now we need to understand this is a very complex dynamic that has happened. First of all, the Gulf countries have realized what human capital is. And unlike Pakistanis and Bangladeshis who go there as low-paid labor, India are the high to middle-end labor, which they are crucially dependent on. So, it's gone from a kind of a employer-employee relationship to a sort of almost like rishta ban raha hai. It's matchmaking happening. Number one, that was the people-to-people contact. The second was, we have a prime minister finally who's very powerful. For the last 30 years prior to this, we had coalition governments where, prime ministers would come, prime ministers would go, they would be on shaky ground. The third is the fact that, this is a prime minister who's seen as a Hindu nationalist who will never be accused of, coying up to Islamic countries or whatever. So he can be absolutely effusive, do whatever he wants, and it is always welcomed, to an extent that all of them have given him their highest national award. The fourth important thing out here is how much personal warmth he brings to every friendship. There is a certain Western Anglophile audience that was making fun of him, hugging Barack Obama and things like that. But remember, this goes down very well in West Asia. It has built up massively a massive bank of goodwill for him in West Asia, where they now feel they can trust him completely. They take him on board. They see him as a partner. Remember, there was that one maybe slightly unfortunate incident of a Emirati princess who escaped on a boat, and she was returned immediately to the Emirates, which they see this as, it's one man on the top out there, it's one man on the top out here. There is no multiple centers of decision making. The two are talking to each other and they are in perfect sync with each other. It works perfectly with the UAE, it works perfectly with Oman, it works perfectly with Saudi Arabia. Everything has it's a perfect alignment of stars.
Right, absolutely, a perfect alignment of stars, Kartikeya. And I was just watching that footage of Prime Minister Modi with Sheikh Mohammed, and the warmth is intact, the way they hugged each other, as Abhijit was mentioning. These things carry a lot of weight in our part of the world. Kartikeya, what's your take on it? Especially that thing of what Abhijit mentioned, that this is actually as significant as what the Indo-US nuclear deal was to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's
See, there are a couple of things. One is that there has been a departure from the Nehruvian foreign policy. which was more around Arab nationalism in contrast to what Israelis were doing. So he disconnected a lot of parts. Secondly, interests are forever, not ideological issues like Arab nationalism, Arab unity, or the issue of Palestine. Third is that yes, he cultivated a relationship with MBZ, who is supposed to be lightning rod for MBS, another important figure. But I think what Prime Minister Modi has done is that he has also understood the complexity of the West Asian politics. It's divided between Shia and Sunni camps. If you look at the investments which the Prime Minister has done, is primarily in the Sunni alliance. If you look at Quad, if you look at our relationship with Riyadh, if you look at our relationship with UAE, I think we have done very well. In fact, it has, I would say, Iran is a deficit area. Our ships came under the attacks from Houthis, like a warning message. So his investment, for example, the Emirati Queen, it was also an indication that if we cater to each other's interests, then I think a lot of things will fall into places. I am not putting or saying that it's 2 + 2, but the deal which India signed,
the gas
deal, for the 20 years, I think that's an important investment. And lastly, I would say that Prime Minister Modi has disentangled the West Asian pivot, They're independent. Like for example, in 2015, when I was in Israel, he didn't go to the Palestinian territory. A lot of people wrote articles.
He dehyphenated the relationship.
And secondly, Indian priority. I think 20, 30 years ago, they wanted planes from us. We didn't give them. They went to the Pakistani government. They got it. But then Arabs or the ruling class from UAE, they would come to Mumbai to see what electricity is doing or how hospitals function. So it's priority.
I want to bring in Pramit here. Pramit, the point that Abhijit mentioned, and of course Karthikeya said, that our outreach is primarily to the Sunni Arab world and not so much with the Iranians. And you're looking at, this is something we've spoken about before, that axis of influence from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean is today, it's all Shia. Where does that leave us, given the fact that our ships have to pass through areas which are very clearly dominated by Shias with anti-ship ballistic missiles?
So, well, the point is that it's not that we have a hostile relationship with the Shia world. Quite the opposite. India is the third largest Shia country in the world, and has perfectly friendly relationships with Iraq, Iran, and Syria. If you look at, for example, when India imposed grain export ban on wheat, the countries that were exempt included Syria and Yemen. India said that these are countries that we take seriously, and we're exempting them from the ban. But they're also United Arab Emirates. But look, the Sunni monarchies have come to the table and said, we see a post-American Gulf, we see a post-hydrocarbon Gulf, and we need to bring in new players into what is an evolving Gulf regional structure. We see India being part of that game, that you will continue to be a major oil and gas importer. We see you as being a rising military power. And as the Americans effectively begin their slow but steady withdrawal from the Middle East, we expect other external players to come in. And one of them that we see as coming into that game potentially is India. In return, we can do something for you. We can invest in your infrastructure. We can invest in your startups. We can put money on the table in building up a new India because it's in our interest to do so. So you saw a $50 billion commitment from the United Arab Emirates. You saw a $50 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia. And UAE has indicated that when they meet, we presume, Prime Minister Modi in July, they'll put another $50 billion on the table. What happens in Gaza? Totally irrelevant to this larger picture for them. Iran, however, whatever else can be said, because of its determination to maintain a certain posture in the Islamic world, a leadership position, and try to be, as Ayatollah Khomeini once said, more Arab than the Arab, has taken a very hostile position to Israel, even though Israel has repeatedly said, we don't actually have a case. We don't have a problem with your country. But for For ideological reasons, Iran takes that position. This in turn means they get into a fight with the United States, and the sanctions regime is a consequence. And Iran has not handled its economy anywhere as well as the UAE, Saudi Arabia has. As a consequence, they have less to offer economically to India. And they don't have that larger strategic picture that aligns with what the new India is moving to. So yes, we don't have a problem with Iran, but Iran just doesn't bring to the table, doesn't fit in to what India is trying to accomplish economically and strategically than the Gulf monarchies do.
Yeah, excellent points there, Pramit. And Abhijit, this thing that what Pramit mentioned, this fact that how the vacuum that's being caused by the departure of the United States, eventually the US will withdraw out of the Middle East. Can that be filled by India, and to what extent do you think in the next decade or so? And do you actually see a point in the future, in the not so distant future, where we can actually be like a mediator to the regional conflicts? West Asia is an extremely fragile part of the world.
So Sandeep, I think the question is, do we actually want to get into that morass? Because, if you go back to the, Middle Eastern Cold War, or even now, just recently, the Syrian civil war, the Middle Eastern Cold War that happened over Yemen and a whole load of other things, it was such acute microbalancing that you would be enemies one year and the very next year you'd be fighting each other. We saw exactly how the, war went in Syria. The Saudis and Emiratis were hell-bent on destroying Assad and toppling him. And today, he's welcomed out there, and they're all lined up against Turkey. So the real question is, do we want to enter there? Do we want to start, negotiating? It is honestly a thankless job. When the Israel-Palestine partition was being discussed in the 1940s, the Israelis and the Palestinians could not agree on anything. They only agreed on one thing, which was that the Indian plan was a terrible plan. And that was literally the only point of agreement that the two of them had. So, this is probably not the best thing to do. However, what we can do is build up good relations with all of them as an honest carrier of messages. Remember, in order to solve people's problems and be a mediator, the mediator is also required to make significant concessions. I don't think we've come at the level of being able to provide security guarantees to them. And if we can provide security guarantees to them, how do you do that in an area where there is so much microbalancing, where today's friend becomes tomorrow's enemy, literally within months, if nothing else? So all of this has to be considered. But I think where we already are is the fact that we very uniquely have everybody's trust out there. The big question mark is possibly Iran, where I'd like to slightly disagree with Pramit, where, I think the Iranians themselves, sometimes they can be brilliant negotiators, but sometimes they're just too smart by half for their own good. You look at Chabahar, they stalled it for so long. The moment, every single ambassador to Iran will tell you this, the moment their relations with the West get great, they have no time for India or Indian infrastructure projects. The moment their relations with the West go south, then immediately India becomes the flavor of the month out there. You can't have a relationship like that. But that is not a fault on our side. That is a fault on their side. And we also need to remember, Indian policy has been very consistent. We've never antagonized the Middle East. We've always pursued friendly relations with them, even frequently when they didn't want those friendly relations, or they sided very openly with Pakistan. And it's really, like I said, a great alignment of the stars, but we should be very careful before we overplay our hand.
Absolutely, a careful alignment of the stars, and of course, let's not forget the shifting sands of the Middle East.
I think he made a very relevant point. There is history to it. If you look at the history of Islam, it has more of Persian influence than the influence of Saudi Arabia. In India, custom is not to say Allah Hafiz, people say Khuda Hafiz. and that's Persian. If you look at the way the architecture of the Mughals, pre-Mughals, Khilji, they were inspired by the Persians. Even the Mughal, even the Indo-Islamic or Rajput architecture, there's nothing called Hindu architecture. It's inspired by the Persian architecture. The script was Persian. Even if you look at the earlier scripts of Sikhism, it is in Persian. So, you know, I agree that Iran has not been able to connect with a new modern India. But what coming back to Prime Minister, what he has also done is, he has disconnected domestic politics from its effect on foreign policy in West Asia. That he has, and there is no Shia cause, there is no Sunni cause.
That's right.
That disconnection has happened, and it's not as India has been immune to it. No, look at Manmohan Singh.
Right.
Mamata Banerjee did not allow Manmohan Singh to sign that Teesta Accord. And Karunanidhi did not allow Manmohan Singh to go to Colombo. Salman had to go there.
Those are the exigencies of coalition politics.
But then, you know, the local constituency is having a larger say on the issue. Because see, this has been in the larger politics of the Congress, Khilafat movement. And Khilafat resonated throughout the Congress party. It led to lot of difference of opinion within senior leaders. So, you know, you can be anything in India, but if interests meet, you know, you can be friends forever. So there's a political side to it also.
Pramit, but this, the inauguration of the temple in UAE, Mandir Wahi Banayenge, what's the significance of this? What's the larger significance beyond just the temple?
Well, I think for Prime Minister Modi has put a lot of emphasis on the Indian diaspora. He sees them as a major political constituency with should we say, oversized influence on domestic audiences in India. And so he has gone out of his way to cater to their concerns. So everywhere he's gone, and it's even in countries like, let's say, Myanmar, which has a small but very poor and impoverished Indian ethnic minority, but he's gone and met them anyway. I mean, the first prime minister to do so. And in the case of the Gulf, he's basically told the UAE, well, one of the things I want to have for the Indian population there, because they've asked for it, is the right to be able to worship. And that has traditionally that's been severe limitations in the Gulf. In the UAE, they would sort of allow Hindu temples, but it was always in a garage and the police would just look the other way, but it was not, you know, formalized. So as part of the new Gulf image that UAE wants to do, but also because of their desire to develop a new relationship with India, he said, this is one of my requests, put this on the table. And UAE have now conceded this. They said, yes, not only do we want that relationship, given where UAE and to some lesser degree Saudi Arabia are going in terms of moving away from stricter Islamic codes, this is acceptable. And UAE desperately wants to become like a new Singapore, if you wish, a sort of place where everybody does business. And all great powers, if you wish, have a stake in the stability of the Gulf, which is their fundamental geopolitical aim. So the temple fits into UAE's requirements, and it fits in perfectly with the prime minister's image and requirements. And so I think that's where that's where the symbolism really arises. I mean, the ultimate goal would be one day to have something like that in Saudi Arabia, but that I think is still a while to go.
Right. A temple in Saudi Arabia, Abhijit, is it inconceivable to you, given the fact that you have Prince Mohammed, the reformer prince of Saudi Arabia, who wants to take it kicking and screaming into the 21st century?
To be fair, he's not taking it kicking and screaming. Remember, the last time somebody wanted to take it kicking and screaming was King Faisal, and he got stabbed by his own relative at a darbar. And remember when the founder, Saud himself, wanted to stop the expansion, his own Ikhwan, his vanguard revolted against it, and they had to be very brutally crushed. I think what we did not see was the demographic shifts that have happened out there, where Saudi Arabia is very, very young. They're very connected thanks to the internet age. They've all grown up in the internet age. They're all connected with the outside world. And the general room for conservatism has come down very, very drastically. He also had the benefit of MBZ, or rather the Abu Dhabi template, the Dubai template, if you want to call it that, to go on as a roadmap. The other thing that has also happened out there is they've now moved towards investing heavily in human beings.
Yes.
And when you come to human investment, when India has such a big a human contribution to both these countries,
Yeah.
that is seen as an absolutely critical part of the workforce. Just to reinforce what Pramit said, I would say Dubai has already become the new Singapore. Singapore's actually, if you go there to Singapore now, it's getting a bit slummy. It's actually a bit dingy. Dubai is a lot
Right.
posher, if you want to call it that. And also remember, it is now becoming the banking and financial center of the Middle
Yes.
East, which is very important for financial intelligence and things like that. There are also, unlike Singapore, which is a socialist republic of Singapore, there are no taxes in Dubai.
Right.
So it's becoming a very, very lucrative model. It is very important for India as well in getting those finances, the inward investment and things routed through there. It becomes even more important in terms of domestic politics. So, what Karthikeya, the point he made was divorcing domestic politics for international politics. We need to remember that in India, we mostly have the Deobandi and Barelvi sects,
Yes.
which aren't really viewed as, kosher or halal, whatever you want to use the term, by the Arabs. The Emiratis, the Saudis, and the Qataris, and things like that, they follow Salafism. And so, the Salafist reforms in itself, which see an Arab interpretation of the Quran as being much more valid than a non-Arab interpretation of the Quran, you will actually see a lot of these interpretations and normative value of Saudi fatwas and things like that start to permeate into India. You find that even within India, there was a big rift between the Shias and the Sunnis.
Yes.
The Shias were at the absolute top of the income ladder. The Sunnis were at the absolute bottom of the income ladder. And you have Shia sects like the Aga Khanis, the Boras and things like that, who are extremely progressive. The Sayyidina actually asked his supporters to come out and vote for the BJP. The Aga Khan has absolutely zero problems with the BJP. And you will slowly, as our own domestic empowerment of the average Sunni individual, as opposed to the Qawm as a whole, starts taking shape, the better education, better access to facilities, combined with this sort of benevolent interpretations of Salafism that are coming in from the Gulf, will have a very, very significant long-term impact on India's domestic political scene in the near future.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it, Karthikeya? This thing, the points that Abhijit mentioned, the fact about religion and the influences that are going to come in from Saudi Arabia. Do you actually see that happening, two-way traffic?
No, Barelvis and Deobandis, they are far more influential in Pakistan and Egypt.
In the Egypt,
and Pakistan. So yes, he has a point that the Salafi version of Islam,
it's always seen as the hardline, puritanical,
which fueled a lot of Islamism around the world. But they're larger. You had Iran and Saudi Arabia competing for it. People forget that in 1979, two things happened. You had revolution in Iran, and Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, and then you had
the siege of Makkah.
And the siege of Makkah, and suddenly Saudi Arabia realized that if they are the custodians of the two most holy shrines, and there's a revolution in Iran, then where would they stand? Because after the breakup of the Ottomans, the keys went to the families who controlled Makkah and Medina. So I think that there are a lot of things at play, but when we are connecting the dots, I think the most important thing in context of Modi is that he was a man whose visa was scrapped, not allowed to go to the United States of America. People had a problem. People said that how will he connect with the larger world? He's a divisive figure. But the fact is that he has been able to cut through all the labels which were tagged on him.
Yes.
That's the bigger picture.
In fact, the foreign policy thing itself, I mean, he was completely, we didn't know what he stood for in foreign policy. He was seen as a provincial politician.
Till 2014, even those who had campaigned for him had no idea what Modi would do when he'll go to Madison Square.
Yes.
People had no idea. So what he did, "May force be with you," was in itself a revelation. I just can't forget that.
Right. And Pramit, again, coming back to this SWOT analysis of West Asia, it is a huge source of, for labor and remittances. It's 50% of our energy is from there. But like all of you have mentioned, it's also on shifting sands, right? A conflict can break out at any moment and Indians are caught in the crossfire. You think it's worth the risk, or is it time for us to kind of start de-risking ourselves from there and looking for alternate energy sources, supplies, like maybe Mozambique, for instance, or Oman or something like that?
Well, we have begun that process, as you mentioned. Mozambique, we have the Rovuma oil field, but we also have a problem that the LNG terminal there is caught by fighting between Al-Shabaab and the Mozambique government. And so diversification is difficult, partly because virtually no place produces oil and gas as cheaply as the Gulf. And if you look at the geographical proximity, there's literally nothing in the world as close to India. The broader story, which is happening under our climate policies, is for India to completely get itself off of imported hydrocarbons altogether. But that's a long way to go. If the economy is growing at 7%, this renewable energy drive of India, while impressive, is running to stand still. If anything, it's still falling behind. So we will struggle on that one. We will continue to be using hydrocarbons for at least the next probably 20 years minimum. And we will have to import the vast bulk of that. And then again, we will go where the price is good, and that automatically leads us back to the Gulf. We're buying Russian oil right now, but that's also a big geopolitical risk as well. But look around, where else do you get that from on the scale and price level that Gulf gives us? That's one element. The diaspora is another thing. There is literally no other place in the world where working class, lower middle class Indians are able to get jobs and remit money on the scale they do in the Persian Gulf.
It's what, $80 billion a year? It's
exactly. And well, about half of that roughly comes from the Gulf, and almost, I think, a diaspora of about what, 10 million, 11, 12 million. So you really have nowhere else, again, that matches this area. You can't go to the West. Will not allow immigrants on that level, especially at that social level. Southeast Asia, it's also not feasible. So you don't have any place to go. And it's a huge social outlet, a big source of revenue for that class, so you put all that together, plus what Abhijit mentioned, that it has an important impact on the Muslim population in India as well, where Islam goes in that region. It's very hard to see how India breaks off its interests in that area. So, which is why you come into the question of, if India's interests in the Gulf are so strong and are likely to continue to be strong for a few more decades, does India then have to come to the decision, as the Americans did in the 1950s, also with reluctance, we have to be involved in helping maintain stability in the Gulf? What I think we're doing right now, which is why the ITU to IMEC and so on are so important, we are saying, you local players, the local UAE, Saudi Arabia, hopefully Iran, you create that regional architecture, and India is happy to support you. What India will try to avoid to do, which is sort of what the Americans got sucked into, but then they had greater resources and more hubris, which is that we're not going to come in and create a regional order for you. We're not interested in going down that path. But if you create your own, India is happy to support it.
Absolutely, which has been our policy all along, and I think, like you said, with the I2, U2 and IMEC, that's coming through. But Abhijit, since you look a lot at risks, right, and you've been also studying Iran very closely, what do you think is the one black swan event that could actually take the region in the opposite direction? You think, just look into a crystal ball for us and tell us, could it be Iran going nuclear, or the prospect of Iran fighting Israel? What could, dent this whole West Asian dream for us?
I think that one event, it might be something else. It might be an unknown thing, but I think that one event is exactly what you said, Iran going nuclear. The question is, how much of a threat do they perceive? Now, Israel might not have been terribly happy, when the Saudis and the Emiratis announced their little, I won't say peace, but kind of dampening down the Cold War between them and Iran somewhat. A few months back, because that kind of helps alleviate the siege mentality, or rather did alleviate the siege mentality in Tehran, which is a very effective tool to scaring its own population. The problem since then is Iran almost seems hell-bent on creating that siege mentality all over again, be it using the Houthis to attack, because let's be very clear, the Houthis will not be in a position to attack anything were it not for Iran. The second has been, also using bases in Iraq and Syria to carry out attacks, or at least to supply Hamas and things like that in the Middle East. Now, none of this, and of course, there was this recent tension and strikes between Iran and Pakistan that happened as well. Something is not right out there. I don't know what has happened internally in that structure, but there's almost, on the one hand, immediately after October the 7th last year when Hamas attacked Israel, we saw this sort of very carefully nuanced words towards calibrating its relationship with Israel, not admitting responsibility for it, indicating it did not know what was going to happen. And at the same time, not saying no entirely. There were some statements which could have been read as complicity in what happened. But I think generally Israel accepts that they have nothing particularly strong, no evidence particularly strong linking them. But since then, their actions have been very mystifying. The problem with actions like this is Iran, this is like nuclear signaling. You might want to convey something. The issue is the person the message intended to reading the message right. And I don't think anybody in America, Israel, or the Saudis or Emiratis are reading what Iran wants, what message Iran wants to send. If it is a message of peace, I don't see how it can be a message of peace, but I don't think anybody's seeing it as a message of peace right now, which is why that siege, the exacerbation of the siege mentality is what will ultimately push Iran towards a nuclear test.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Abhijit, fascinating insights. Pramit, as always, Kartikeya. Prime Minister Modi's Arab Connect and Iran could be the spoilsport in that party for that siege mentality. This is a story we'll be tracking very closely as Prime Minister Modi embarks on a very, very significant tour of the UAE and later Qatar. India's farmers are protesting again. They're hurling themselves on barricades on the borders of Delhi, disrupting traffic and throwing urban life out of gear. Now, agriculture employs more than half of India's total workforce and contributes over 20% of the country's GDP. Now, it can be nobody's argument that farmers are neglected. In fact, farm subsidies constitute about 2% of India's GDP, and total subsidy to farmers amount to 21% of their farm income. Farm subsidies, which are the incentives given by the government to farmers, make up about 2% of India's GDP, and over 15 lakh crore have been spent on MSP over the last decade. Now, the question we are asking are India's farmers pampered? Joining me on the News9 Plus show to discuss this are Ramneek Maan, Mr. Sanjay Nath Singh, an old friend, and of course Kartikeya Sharma, who joins us in the studio. Mr. Maan, another farmer protest so close to the Lok Sabha elections. Timing is everything.
Yes, indeed it is, and it is unfortunate for the country, for the community, for the state of Punjab, for the state of Haryana, because both these states have borne the brunt of consequent protests, one after the other, on one pretext or the other. So I personally feel, this timing is also very close to the elections, and this could have been avoided. As a matter of fact, there have been a series of meetings for discussing MSP and how MSP could be implemented and what all crops could be included under MSP. The fact is that currently there are 76 Kisan organizations, farm organizations who are protesting. In all, 10 from Punjab, 6 from Haryana, 5 from UP, 5 from Bihar, 17 from Kerala, 22 from Tamil Nadu, 5 from Puducherry, and 6 from Rajasthan. This is as per the Kisan, spokesperson. So the fact is that the last time there was a protest, there were 580 plus Kisan Jathebandis, and now there are 76 odd Jathebandis.
Right.
None of those 580 or these 76 Jathebandis have cooperated with the government, or they have joined the discussions for MSP.
Right.
So the intent is clear: my way, how the highway. Highway not literally means you get on the highway, but we get on the highway and block the highways. So this
Right.
is somehow, I feel, very unfair and unjust. So also there is a political angle to it, which we'll discuss during the course of our discussion.
Right, absolutely. But first, let's watch this explainer by Justin Thomas on what the farmers want and why they're protesting this time.
Indian farmers have taken to the roads again. More than 200 farmer unions are marching to Delhi. There are also calls for a nationwide Grameen Bandh on February 16th. Well, the primary reason for the farmers' protest is their demand for minimum support price for crops. In 2021, if you remember, the BJP government promised the implementation of minimum support price, but it is yet to come into effect. And let's rewind back to 2020. Farmers from Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh held a year-long protest against the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act, along with a couple of other farm laws. And these laws were later repealed by the government. MSP was one of the conditions of the farmers to end their agitation. And the Farmers Protest 2.0 is aimed at putting pressure on the government ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. It's worth noting out here that prominent farmer leaders are missing from the latest agitation. The Samyukta Kisan Morcha Non-Political and Kisan Mazdoor Morcha have organized the protest this time. The Samyukta Kisan Morcha, which led the earlier protest, won't be participating. And their leader, Gurnam Singh Charuni, who played a major role in the 2020 protest, says, and he claims that he wasn't consulted for the upcoming march, and a few organizations decided on their own. So what are exactly the farmers demanding this time around? First of all, they are seeking a law guaranteeing minimum support price for all crops. They want debt waiver for farmers and laborers. They're also seeking reintroduction of the Land Acquisition Act of 2013 nationwide. Most importantly, they are seeking action against the perpetrators of Lakhimpur Kheri violence during the 2020 protest and compensation for families of farmers who died during the agitation. They want withdrawal from the World Trade Organization and ban on all free trade agreements. They're also seeking monthly pension of Rs 10,000 for farmers, as well as 200 days of employment per year and daily wage of Rs 700 under Manrega. Meanwhile, Haryana government has sealed the state's border to stop the march. Delhi police has also issued a traffic advisories. Well, authorities are on alert to prevent a repeat of the 2020 situation. The farmers' talks with the union government have till now been inconclusive, and it remains to be seen how effective the march will be this time around. And the farmers are better prepared for an extended protest. So the question is this the beginning of another year-long agitation? Let's wait and watch.
Is this the beginning of another year-long agitation, or will it be resolved soon? Mr. Sanjay Nath Singh, the last time around, one year? Are we going to see a repeat of that?
That was a 1 year long agitation, and unfortunately, it seems that the way it's going, what's happened today, the whole day, we have been watching on televisions as well. The way the agitating farmers have been pushed back by the police, and there was a counter also from the farmers.
Yes.
They also retaliated. Now, the thing is that it doesn't look like that the farmers are going to stop at this. I have always been of the opinion that, okay, fine, if they're coming, they want to come to Delhi, let them come to Delhi in a controlled manner,
right.
And then let them have the say. After all, they are also citizens of this country. They are not coming from Mars or somewhere else. So please allow them to come. They
Right.
want to come to the national capital
Right.
with their agenda
Yes.
of certain demands. Now, look, the problem, government has done many a thing in favor of the farmers. They have given away a lot of money in one form or the other, and a lot of subsidies. Maybe, as you rightly said, that the total subsidy given is just a fraction of the total subsidies given to other sectors.
Yes.
Agreed. But at the same time, what I feel is that the last time when the agitation took place, there was one major flaw on part of the government, and that was communication.
Right.
It was not communicated very well. And this time round, again, communication throughout this period has
Yes.
not been very, very effective. It has not gone down very well with the farmers and the farmer leaders. At the same time, it's also a fact that the elections are around the corner.
Yes.
There are a lot of political, lot of farmer unions who are actually inclined to contest the elections in Punjab.
Right, right. Kartikeya, this point about Punjab that Mr. Singh mentioned, do you think it's, a lot of it boils down to a Punjab problem? Is it a farmer problem, you think, or is it purely a Punjab problem?
I think we can break it down into certain regions. But you see, electorally, I don't know how far it will have an impact. 2021, for 3 months, people said that, it's the end of Adityanath and Samajwadi Party RLD
Yes.
alliance is going to win. Yogi Adityanath swept the elections.
Yes.
And it is for this reason Jain Chaudhary is in NDA and not with Samajwadi Party
Right.
and India Bloc. So I don't find electoral resonance with it, but yes, what it does is it's bad optics.
Yeah.
The sort of continuous coverage which happened on TV,
Yes.
drones being used to drop
Right.
smoke bombs and all
Yeah.
that. So I don't think the government wants that.
Yes.
The larger issue is it physically feasible, one?
Right.
What sort of reforms we require in our agriculture sector?
We never talk about
Land
reforms. We
have
never
taken
talk
place
about
in this
agricultural
country.
reforms.
But
It's
what
always
sort of
about
agricultural
money.
reforms are required?
Yeah.
What about consumer rights? Farmer politics got prioritized
Right.
in 1950s, 60s under Chaudhry Charan Singh, because Charan Singh suddenly realized that the 70% of the people coming to parliament were agriculturists.
Yes.
If you look at their CVs. Now 70% of the people who come to parliament are not agriculturists.
Right.
And at that point of time, 69% of the GDP came from agriculture.
Yes.
This is not correct. So things have changed. But
Yeah.
our farm politics
Yeah.
or our politics around farmers has remained fossilized in the language and vocabulary of 1970s.
Right.
That is a larger issue.
Right.
What would I would say, sorry to use the word, look cool in 70s when you take over the boat club
Yeah.
is not so cool today.
Is not so
because
cool
you
here.
completely
Yeah.
disrupt the city life.
Mr. Mann, this point I was asking about, is it a Punjab problem? Essentially all farmer agitations all boil down to the problem, the crisis in Punjab's agricultural sector, whether it is the use of pesticides, the groundwater being run out, the MSP running riot, Punjab reeling under indebtedness. Is that a Punjab problem primarily, which is forcing the farmers to look for stuff like MSP from the government, a guarantee of MSP and a 10,000 rupee monthly pension?
Yes, it is primarily a Punjab problem. There is no doubt about it. But the agriculture crisis goes across Punjab.
Yes.
There are people in Haryana and Rajasthan who also suffer because the land holding, the sizes of land holdings are going smaller.
Right.
And the incomes are going lower. So the government had come up with the idea of, we will double the farm income by 2024,
Yes.
which was promised initially by the Prime Minister himself, none other
Right.
than the Prime Minister himself. Now, there were methods which were to be adopted, including that of the Swaminathan Commission report in 2006,
Yes.
which, for good 8 years from 2006 to 2014, Congress was sitting over. So it is also a political problem, which was, goes back to the Congress era.
Yeah.
And the fact also, the gentleman before me rightly pointed out, during the 1950s, it was 1952 to be precise, when Chaudhry Charan Singh actually got onto an agitation, but it was not a violent agitation, it was a peaceful agitation. And there were demands which were met, and those demands were reasonable. Now, the fact is, the farmers, when they get onto the discussion table, they say my way or the highway.
Right.
या तो हमारी बात in totality मान लीजिए, or we are going to the protest way. So the fact still remains that the last 1.5 years, ever since the protest got over, the farmers or the farm organizations never joined a single discussion on MSP or the crops which could be taken to MSP. That is one.
Right.
Number two,
Yes.
now the adjoining states of Haryana, they are giving MSP on moong dal, they are giving MSP on bajra, they are giving
Right.
MSP on sarson. But the Punjab government is not giving MSP. The only thing that the Punjab government is doing is they're earning their, commission from the MSP being given by the central government.
Absolutely,
The purchases on the MSP in Punjab are done at the behest of the central government. The government of Punjab has done nothing to control, one,
Right.
the depleting industry to the consequent and the regular protests in Punjab have led to deindustrialization of Punjab, a state which used to be number 1 is today number 13, number 14. So it has been consequently on the decline, and there has been a disgruntlement and disgust amongst the people of Punjab because of the falling of the fiscal, that is the financial health of the state. And people now are looking for foreign lands, and there is a problem of migration. You know, for every single individual, a Punjabi leaving Punjab and going to Canada or US or New Zealand or UK or to the Europe or any other foreign country, we have 3 to 4 people who are migrating from other states into Punjab. So that is also a major problem. Now, rather than to address the problem, that it is very unfortunate that the Chief Minister of Punjab, Sardar Bhagwant Singh Mann, has come up with an analogy, and he says that, you know, there are there are barbed wires towards Pakistan and there are barbed wires towards Haryana. Why don't you leave us alone? Why don't you get us free? So that is a separatist or it's an anarchist way of looking at things, and within in a democratic setup, within a federal structure, these things are not acceptable. Now, for this to happen or to get corrected is not just the financial impetus or the financial support that the state needs, it also needs a good policy, and it needs the state government to drive the state in a better way.
Right,
you know,
absolutely.
When it comes to
Mr. Mann, I'm sorry, we are
demanding
completely
from
out
the
of
state,
time
it is
now. I'm going to give it to Karthikeya for some closing comments on this. Karthikeya, where do you see this headed now? You see a long, prolonged siege as
unless and until
Sanjay Nath Singh mentioned.
See, there are two things. Okay, I don't think it will be allowed to pile up the way the agitation piled up, because the government had time. It took them a year to take back the demands. And the tamasha which happened in Delhi, and the sort of the way agitators climbed out of the Red Fort and things which unfolded thereon, they were pretty embarrassing. So I don't think they will be allowing that. But to say that is BJP duly worried in terms of elections? No. Worried in terms of optics? Yes. Action quick. How? I think that is yet to be factored in, because ministers have already spoken. So I think it will require some sort of back channel negotiations. But if you look at the resolve by way BJP is trying to stop them 50 to 70 kilometers away from
even
NCR,
the borders,
was not done the last time. They were right there on the border.
Right on the border, and they were building up pressure. As of now, there's an impasse between the farmers and the government, but the solution, as it is with everything else, is through dialogue. One hopes that the government and the farmers can resolve their differences amicably. I'd like to thank Mr. Mann and my friend Sanjay Nath Singh and Karthikeya for joining us this evening. Thank you for watching.